you guys are having a good day. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and the Black Business School. And I am here with my good friend Julian Gordon. And Julian is the Dean of Entrepreneurship in the Black Business School, just an all around smart brother. And first of all, before we begin this conversation, this important conversation, I want to ask my brother, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a good day. It's been a good day.
Good, good, good. Yeah, man. You and I, we've been doing this project for about what a little over a year now. I don't know how long we've worked together. At least a year, right?
Yeah, over a year. November is when it kicked off. November 2017.
Yeah, yeah, and the Freedom Family. And one of the things that kind of popped off, or that has been going on, during the time we've been working on this project, is this whole government shutdown.
Yeah,
See that the politicians are fighting as usual. It's not going to stop. It's only going to keep getting worse. And you see a lot of people struggling. A lot of people that really are hit hard financially from the government shutdown.
yeah.
Now I have some thoughts about it in terms of what this really says for Black folks and how we should sort of process all of this. What are your thoughts? When you kind of see the chaos kind of happening in Washington.
Yeah, so for me, I'm not really into politics that heavy, but what I think all of this naturally does is it actually just pushes us back towards our own, rather than relying on other institutions and entities to support us and allow us to live a meager living as a people collectively. There's some of us who are out here, quote unquote, winning. But if our collective community is not winning, then that's irrelevant to me, right? So I think when these kind of things happen, it just pushes us back to ourselves. And this is how we had it. Just a prime example is when we couldn't play in the major leagues, we created the new Negro leagues, right? We had it within ourselves to create all of these institutions. We just look at Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street, we even had, I think there were 3 airplanes owned by Black Wall Street. So for me, I don't get angry at this. I feel for brothers and sisters who relied heavily and were dependent upon the government entities for their sustenance. And I wish I had enough resource to step in, but ultimately it moves us towards empowerment when things start getting taken away from us that we didn't need to be relying on anyways.
Yeah, man. Well, what the government shutdown reminds me of, it reminds me when I was little, and I would have people talk about, what it means to get a good job, and a lot of people made the biggest mistake I see a lot of people making, where they assume that a job is the most secure way to make your money. That basically, if you have a job, that's the safe route.
Yeah,
And what people don't really understand is that a job is not the safe route. A job is the dangerous route. That's the
yeah,
risk. I mean, a lot of people avoid starting businesses and stuff like that or investing because they feel like that's risky. But I say actually not investing and depending on the government or depending on a corporation to sustain you and living paycheck to paycheck is
yeah,
not as risky as you can get. Even Melissa Harris Perry on CSM or MSNBC, she went off on this conservative lady because she said there's nothing riskier than being poor in America. And so when I talk about, investing and stuff like that, I'm seeing that. I'm thinking, how do you minimize the risk? And what people probably don't realize, about money is that, as long as you're depending on kind of one source to get your money, and that source happens to be controlled by either volatile or greedy people, or people that don't have your best interest at heart, you're always in a risky position.
always vulnerable. Yeah,
Volatile. The government is very volatile. These politicians, they never gonna stop fighting. Corporations are very greedy. We know that white supremacists their organizations don't have our best interests at heart. So you're not really safe when you're depending on those people to take care of you. Can you guys speak to that?
yeah, man. If one person can turn your life from here to here in 2.2 seconds, you are, I don't care how much money you're making, you're in a pretty bad situation. And when we talk about freedom, there's levels to freedom. I call them degrees of freedom. I don't care how many college degrees you have. The only degree that really matters to me is your degree of freedom. And a degree of freedom is being able to have multiple streams of income. A degree of freedom is to be able to have revenue coming from different sources. So there's a couple things about jobs that there's just trickery in that whole situation. So first and foremost, modern day slavery today is student loans plus a single family home plus a single source of income. That's modern day slavery right there. Now that's been branded as the American dream, but that in and of itself is modern day slavery. When you look at it, 75% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So the funny thing about this is that this is not just a black thing, right? If 75% of America, we do not make up 75% of America. Like, this is not a black thing. There's the haves and there's the have-nots. And so this is not even a race thing. These people don't even care about their own, right? It's just every man for themselves. That's how they see it. And I don't know if they have a tribe that they call themselves, but right now it's the haves and the have-nots. And so the way I think about it is, we're moving away from the 40-40 club. The 40-40 club is closed, right? 40-40 club is working 40 hours a week for 40 years for one employer. That is gone. That is dead. What we're stepping into now is what I call the entrepreneur reality. It's the entrepreneur reality. And what that means is that we are all already entrepreneurs. An employee is simply an entrepreneur with one big client. And if that one client cuts you off, you're in trouble. And so this is why it's so important to have multiple streams and not always be in the business of actually selling your time for money. And again, selling your time at wholesale prices, just like Costco. When somebody buys your time in bulk, they're going to pay you less per hour. And that's generally what is happening when you agree to some sort of employment. You're selling your time at wholesale prices. They're getting it. You're like the jelly or the peanut butter at Costco, and they're buying you at a discounted price. And so it's really important, if you really want to be free, to get out of the time for money business. And do you have to start with time for money in order to start getting some bread? Yes. But ultimately, your mind should be focused on escaping the time for money exchange.
Wow. Well, well, I'll tell you what, Julian Gordon, that's who I'm talking to, in case you guys don't know. And I see Alicia Howard came in here. And so, Alicia, if you have any questions, you're inside the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. But what I'll say about this is that what I really think is the greatest challenge when it comes to sort of shaping economic thinking in the future is that there's so much. It's not learning the information that's hard, right? I know this stuff really, really well, so I can break it down for a 5-year-old. But sometimes it's probably easier to teach a 5-year-old than it is to teach a 45-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Because with a 45-year-old, I have 40 years of misinformation I got to unravel.
Right.
To trust me enough to believe what I'm saying.
Right.
So is already headed in that direction. I was talking to the 9-year-old in our house, and we were talking about what a trademark is. And I was showing her in the refrigerator. I said, now you look here, you see this little letter right here next to the next to the mustard. That's a trademark. Yeah. I grabbed the relish. I said, you see I said, find the trademark. She said, it's right there. Grab the eggs, find the trademark right there, right? Oh. And it's so easy, because what I see is like sort of this line of thinking already with the kids, where they're already sort of being introduced to these ideas of ownership at an early age. Whereas it'd be tougher, to talk to somebody who, has been an employee their whole life, who really, in a way, is almost uncomfortable with this idea of sort of exploring other economic options. We tend to be very nervous about going down the unbeaten path, even if the current path is beating our butt. You know what I mean? Like we'd rather get beat on the path than to go on the unbeaten path, because we're like, well, at least I know, like, this is the devil I know. I'm really scared of the devil that I don't know. And so, I ultimately, I think that when you look at economic security, I think that we have to redefine what it means to be economically secure. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as financial security when you have just one job. There's no such thing as income security when you have one income. When you have one company that is taking care of you and you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're not in a secure position. I don't care what they told you. Companies will lie to you all the time. The government will lie to you all the time, and you're not in a secure position. Security is very basic in the sense that security comes from what we call in economics, we call this income smoothing. Income smoothing means the ability to have enough resources in reserves to deal with natural fluctuations in your income stream. Right. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, if I am a rapper and I'm only making money when I'm doing shows and when I'm hot, but I'm not making money when I'm not doing shows, then what I do is when I'm doing shows, I'm saving money, I'm investing money,
Right.
I'm creating alternate streams of income so that when I'm not hot anymore, I'm still going to be okay. Or if I'm an actor in Hollywood, when I'm, a lot of actors go broke because they'll make a lot of money from a movie and go spend all that money, and then they're begging for their next role to get their next opportunity. Whereas the smart actors are the ones who say, okay, I made $3 million from this joint. I'm gonna take that money. I'm gonna go buy me a house. I'm gonna go invest a lot of it in stocks. I'm gonna go and invest in some businesses that'll keep creating other streams of income. So therefore, if I don't ever get another film role in the next 5 years, I'm gonna still be okay. What are your thoughts on that in terms of what economic security really means to you?
Yeah, so there's two different models. The first one is the retirement model, right? And the retirement model is, let me stack up enough nuts, right? And by the time I can no longer work or I choose to stop working, to last me for the next 20 years of my life when I'm on the tail end, right? So if I want to retire and I expect to live, nobody knows how long they're actually going to live, and we're living longer and longer anyways. But if I want to have 50,000 a year, then I need to stack up $1 million if I plan to live 20 years. So that's the runway model. But the other model that actually would provide you with more security than the runway model is actually creating a passive stream that meets your cost of living. So what if for 40 years, you just focused on trying to build up a passive stream of income that met your cost of living, right? People oftentimes don't even know their cost of living, or their cost of living is directly equivalent to their paycheck. Whatever comes in is what goes out. And this is why anytime people are living paycheck to paycheck, they say, oh, I'm living within my means, but you're actually living above your cost of living. Because I think that at least 30% should be actually going into investing in your future, into passive streams of income like real estate, stocks, etc. So that's the first thing. But where the trickery begins, Doc, is when people get their paycheck and they call it income. That's where the trickery begins, because your paycheck is not your income. Your income from a business standpoint is revenues minus expenses equals income. That's in a business. But when people get their paycheck, they call it income. That's not your income. That's actually your revenues, right? Then you have your living expenses, and what's left over at the end of the month, that is your true income. And a lot of people have more month left over at the end of the money rather than having more money left over at the end of the month, right? So the language that we use to speak about money, there's a lot of trickery in it. Now, an individual, they get taxed on their revenues or their salary, whereas a business only gets taxed on their income after expenses. So this is why even if you are an employee and you get a W-2, you need to be working on a 1099 business. You need to be taking that same skill set that you are selling to your employer at wholesale prices and actually be selling that to a smaller company who can never work with your employer, somebody who's in a different industry that may actually need that same skill set. You need to be selling your services and that same skill set that you're selling to your employer at wholesale prices to someone else at a premium price, so that you can actually have more revenues coming in, which will hopefully hit your bottom line as income.
Well, I like that a lot, man. I mean, I think that, I like the way you redefine what income is, because you're right. A paycheck is not income; it's revenue, right? And
Revenue.
right, because for a corporation, your income is what you have after you pay your expenses. And if you think about it, I mean, according to your criteria, a lot of people in America live paycheck to paycheck and have no income at all.
No income.
Their revenue, their paycheck is here, and their expenses are here, and it's like a net zero kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, if you think about that, I mean, that's kind of crazy, right? You're running a business that literally has no income and is not making a profit.
You might as well just quit. You might as well just stop. You might as well just stop, right? So here's the thing. When you look at it like that, there could be somebody who's making $100,000 a year, but they live off of 95. And then there's somebody who makes $45,000 a year and they live off of 40. They have the same exact income, though their revenues are different. And when you think about it that way, wow, my income is actually what's left over at the end of the month. I've been working for this many years and I have nothing in my account. What I encourage people to do when I'm like speaking live or anything like that, I say, go look at your bank account right now, and then go look at your bank account and see what it was 12 months ago, right? So let's say your bank account has $15,000 in it right now. I say, go look at it 12 months ago. 12 months ago, it had 8,000, right? So 15 minus 8, that's 7. That means that over the course of the year, you only figured out how to generate 7,000 new dollars. That's a rude awakening for people when they look at that. And now if we say, look at your working life, you've been working for 20 years and you have $15,000 and you've been working for 20 years. That means you haven't created, on average, you created less than $1,000 of income a year.
Wow. And you know what's interesting is, based on your definition of income, there, you know, and you alluded to this for a second as well, but I want to hammer that point in.
Yeah.
What you're basically saying is that there are people who have very small paychecks who have higher incomes than people who have very big paychecks, which is a beautiful way to kind of look at it. You know, I think about my late grandmother, Felicia, who was the first person to introduce me to the importance of financial responsibility. It wasn't even about financial knowledge, because a lot of people got knowledge, but they got the responsibility, right? A lot of us know what we're supposed to do, we just don't want to do it. But she used to talk to me a lot about financial responsibility, and she made very little money. She made no more than $20,000 a year her whole career. I'm talking about she retired and was making $22K on retirement day. And but I always found it fascinating that my grandmother always had more money than everybody. You know, like, I mean, we'd have a cousin making 70 grand a year who would be going to my grandmother to borrow money because he broke. You know, and it really comes down to the level of your expenses. I mean, if you let your expenses get out of control, and you know, then you're going to have to work that much harder to catch up. In a way, it's a little bit like sports, right? You know, you have some teams that have such good defense that they can win a football game by scoring like 2 touchdowns, maybe 3. But then you have some teams that where their defense is so bad that they got to score 50 games, you know, to win. Right. So in a way, it's almost like that financial responsibility piece is your defense. And like in sports, you know, defense wins championships, you know, and I think in finance, it's the same way. You know, the economic defense wins championships. And I don't know if we as Black people, maybe you can speak to this, I don't really know if we as Black people have our economic defense up, especially when we're depending on the people who don't like us very much to give us paycheck after paycheck, that without just one of those paychecks, we are broke, bankrupt, and homeless just from missing one of those paychecks. What do you think about that?
Well, here's the thing. I got a flip for you. I think we're actually closer to freedom than any other culture out there. And here's why. We've been more accustomed to living off less than anybody else. And on top of that, we've been able to still have Black joy despite having less economic resource than a lot of people. So if we just figured out how to improve the revenue side of the equation, while also maintaining our defense and keeping our cost of living low and still being able to preserve our joy off of less, then we would actually be closer to freedom than somebody who only can have joy when they've made $100,000 or more. That's how I think about it.
I think that's a great point. You know, I think about, when I think about my kids, you know, my guy kids are like my kids. You know, I have one biological daughter and a few guy kids, and I love them all. And one of the things that's interesting is that one of my godchildren, you know, she made me really think about what financial freedom looks like. Maybe when I was younger, more naive, I thought financial freedom meant making lots of money. And then eventually you realize that that's not it. You know, lots of people who make plenty of money who are not financially free.
Right.
You know, and I realized, you know, my goddaughter, she lives out in Denver. She's very, very cheap. You know, she shops, she gets her shoes at Payless. She don't want no Gucci bag and all that. She's gonna go get the knockoff bag. You know what I mean? She bought a car. She was looking for the right deal and everything else. And so even though her income isn't very high, she's got a lot of financial stability relative to some other young people that I see. And one of the things I told her is, I said, you're actually going to have more financial freedom than most people I know. And it's not because of how much money you make. It's because you freed yourself from this need to feed an incessant spending addiction, right? Because if you have an addiction to a drug or an addiction to spending, addictions have to be fed, and feeding an addiction is very costly. So because you minimize your addiction to spending your addiction to money, you're going to have more financial freedom than most people, because you're going to be able to make 30,000, 40,000 a year and be completely secure financially. Whereas a lot of people are making 80,000 and feel like they're barely getting by.
Yeah, totally with that. In fact, I was talking to Lawrence today, and your brother, and he's in Medellin, and I was asking him what was his cost of living down there, and he said in order for the baby to be born, you know what his medical bill was? Even though she had jaundice, it was $20. The medical bill was $20, Doc. $20.
And the doctors down there are damn good.
And they're great.
Yes.
He said his cost of living, his cost of living is only about $3,000 a month there. That's $36,000 for him and the family to eat well, to live nice. And they're living upper middle class down there. So a lot of us are addicted to America. We're addicted to being here. And in all honesty, this may not be the best space for us. I just made a move from New York to New Orleans. My cost of living has dropped significantly. Now, if I was to take a job in New Orleans, then of course my pay might go down accordingly. But because I can make money from anywhere, my revenue is not changing, but my cost of living has now dropped, which only creates more freedom for me, because freedom is caused by the gap between what you're earning and what you have to pay out to maintain a level of joy in your life. So I know that we can do it. And again, with the government shutdown, I think it just pushes us back to community. All of a sudden, we start moving like the Asians, because now, I can't pay rent. I got to go sleep on my grandma's couch again. That's just pulling community back together, back together, back together. And then we figure, and that's where the community is built. And then we start figuring our way out of that and how to grow from there. When you get just over enough, again, what do they call a job? Just over broke. When you have just enough, right? You get complacent. You get complacent when you have just enough. And I think that's what a lot of the government programs do. They give you just enough so that you're not too angry, but you're not too full either.
Yeah, well, government programs are the devil, in my opinion. I feel like charity and all that, it doesn't mean that it's not necessary in some situations.
Right.
Not saying that at all. It's like, it's almost like a wheelchair. Wheelchairs are important. Some people can't walk, but wheelchairs are terrible for people who have strong legs.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? A wheelchair all day will never give you stronger legs.
Right.
And I think that sometimes we have people that are given a wheelchair before they even find out if they can walk. And I think that's so tragically sad. And I personally think I can say this: the best things I've ever accomplished, in my own life, were times where where something came along and it broke my plate. If you watch even in the movies, like if you watch any superhero movie, that's how they kind of go. Like the person's living one life on one trajectory, and then there's a tragedy. Boom, right? The tragedy sets them back and throws everything off. But next thing you know, they come back and they're a superhero somehow, right? Because they got caught in the molecular decomposition.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or they got burned up in the fire, right? But really, I think what I'm really getting at here, again, without in any way belittling what people are trying to work through with the shutdown, is a lot of times your biggest setback is your greatest blessing if you have the right attitude.
Yeah.
I've rarely gotten big blessings without them coming in the form of a big setback. For example, I can think of a time where my heart was broken and I ended up with the girl of my dreams. I can think of times where I lost, the opportunity that was in front of me, and it pushed me to start my own business. I can think of times where one path in life did not work out. I wanted to be a track star, and that didn't work out. It was so disappointing. I literally remember crying at a track meet because I kept working so hard. And I was training, I was running 3 times a day, doing everything, and I kept getting injured, and I wasn't able to go as fast as I wanted. But what happened was that experience, that brick wall, strengthened me to go in a different direction and made me enormously successful in other areas. So what I really think is that, if you approach things with the right attitude, I think that you can actually turn every setback into a setup for something even greater, not for a comeback. I'm talking about a major come up where literally you're not just catching up with where you would have been. You're at such a high level that you literally look back and say, my God, if this terrible thing hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't be what I am now. I want to ask you about this, man. Can you talk about the event this weekend. We're hosting this 3-day event that's gonna start Friday night at 8 p.m. Can you kind of talk about the Expert Empire webinar and kind of what that is?
Yeah, so especially in this kind of economic environment, the number one thing you got to lock in on is what is your area of expertise, right? We're in an information or knowledge-based economy, and if you lock in on that and you actually pursue mastery at the one thing that you want to dominate at, that's what's actually going to give you the security. That's going to give you more security than any job any employer could do, because there are going to be many people that value the expertise that you have. And so if you already have that kind of expertise and you've been selling it at wholesale prices, we're doing the Expert Empire webinar series this weekend. It's at Expert, no S, Empire webinar.com. It's going to be a 3-part series starting Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to uncover how to actually message yourself and build your influence online, like Dr. Watkins has done over the past 10 years. Then I'm actually going to talk about marketing on Saturday. How do you use funnels and Facebook ads, and how do you language and write copy and things of that nature in order to make sure you will communicate your message effectively using the internet. And then finally on Sunday, your brother Lawrence and Al Duncan, who have killed it in the speaking space, are going to show you how to start monetizing that expertise, that gold mine, that knowledge that you have up here. But your expertise, see, the public, again, the government has failed us because the public education system, what it taught you to do was try to be a master of all different subjects. Oh, you need to be good at English, Spanish, science, biology. You need to know this kind of history. You need to get A's in all those classes. And that's how you become a jack of all trades and a master of none. Whereas if you spent that same amount of time and you started working on your 10,000 hours, from Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000 hour rule, you started building up your 10,000 hours around one skill, one area of expertise, subject mastery or skill mastery, I guarantee you would have more economic security than the person who got the valedictorian from your high school. I guarantee it. But we were taught to do the wrong things. And so, so now it's like, you have been selling something to the marketplace. You've just been selling it to one employer at wholesale prices. What is that thing? Can you even articulate what problem it is that you solve? Because if you can, then I guarantee there are other people out there, individuals and organizations, who would love to pay you for your services, for your book, for your course, for your presentation. If you could simply articulate to the world and let them know that 1, you are valuable, and that 2, you are available. See, that's what most employees fail to do, is that they might prove to themselves and to others that they're valuable, but then people outside of their employer don't know that they're available to actually receive work, right? So if, let's say you work for a digital, or let's say you work for a marketing company like Global Hue or something like that, and you are an executive there, or you just an analyst there, guess what? There are smaller companies or individuals trying to grow their businesses who would happily pay you for the expertise that you were taking and using for McDonald's and for Ford. And that employment actually gives you credibility to sell your services to somebody else who could never afford to work with your employer. And so this is really why it's so important to lock in on your expertise, because there's little gold here. There's literally gold here, and all you have to do is excavate it. So we're doing the Expert Empire webinar series this weekend. Again, that's expertempirewebinar.com. If someone could type that in to chat on Zoom or YouTube, that would be great. But that's expertempirewebinar.com.
Okay, expertempirewebinar.com. That's expert singular, expertempirewebinar.com. I'm gonna be a part of it. I'm gonna support. Also, Julian is extraordinarily good at what he does. My brother Lawrence runs the largest Black-owned speakers bureau in the country, Great Black Speakers. Al Duncan is impressive because Al, he's been making a living as a speaker for a really long time. And I think, and what I found, Julian, is that there's a lot of people, especially people that have, specializations and degrees in certain areas and stuff like that, where they have skills and their dream is to be able to, to speak on that or to teach that or to write a book about that or et cetera. I remember that's what I wanted to do. Back when I was at Syracuse, I was like, okay, I know all this financial stuff. How do I get in front of people where I can just make a living? I didn't necessarily feel like I had to get rich. I just wanted to be able to make a living,
right,
doing what I love, and in the beginning, it was really tough because I used to go pay money to go give speeches. I didn't even get paid to give a speech. Now I can command a fee, stuff like that.
Right.
But back then, I would literally pay, I'd say, okay, I'll come for free. I would pay money. And it was very disappointing too, because I would go places, man, and nobody would be there. I did a book signing in DC one time, and I was so happy this bookstore was gonna let me like bring my little raggedy book, in there and like sign it. Man, did nobody show up to the book signing? Nobody was listening. I mean, it was heartbroken or heartbreaking at the time, but those experiences, I guess they helped me appreciate what I have now. Now I do a book signing, there's a line out the door, and it might literally be a city I've never been to in my life. That was amazing. To be in London, for example, I don't go to London that much. I didn't know anybody in London. And there was like over 150 people in line going all the way out the door. And the book signing took 2.5 hours, and that to me was like, holy shit, like this is real, and it really comes down to kind of understanding. I mean, the benefit I had was in the beginning, I went into the game realizing a couple of key ideas. That one, as a black man, I need to have my own channel of distribution. I can't depend on CBS, CNN, NBC to get my word out, because they're not going to do that. They're not going to share what I have to say. They're going to share what they have to say. And then two, I realized I had to be what I call an MOM, a master of monetization. I had to figure out, okay, how does this translate into a fully functioning business model? The business model is production, distribution, and monetization. I said, how do I figure out how to do all three of these things? And where have my predecessors failed? That was the third thing I thought about.
Great question.
Yeah, I looked at other black men and women who were good like me, who were smart, who had something to say. And a lot of times they would hit roadblocks. Boom, they get shut down. So I studied, I kind of thought about it and processed it and said, how do I set myself up where it's going to be a lot harder to shut me down, right? Yeah. And I'll be damned if it didn't work. And so to me, this is what I think the Expert Empire gathering, this is what I want my contribution to be, is to kind of talk about that journey and to just know it can be done, and to kind of lay out some ideas that might inspire some people and help people kind of get a life that's better than the one that they might already have. That's the most I can do as an OG in the game, so to speak.
And you are OG. I encourage everybody on YouTube, after this live, go to Dr. Watkins' Your Black World channel and click videos, and then click oldest first. And you're going to see his first video on May 31st, 2009. And you'll see the difference between his voice now and his voice then. It takes time, and you refine your message over time. But when you're building an empire, everybody starts with one brick. Everybody starts with one brick, and you can't skip steps. You can't skip steps, but you got to get started. And so just go check out that video to see Dr. Watkins change. And that will inspire you to say, you know what, all I got to do is get started. And you can join us tomorrow night. It's actually a full weekend. Each night is going to be a different webinar. And I think this is actually the best place to start, would be the Expert Empire webinar on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
All right. Well, expertempirewebinar.com, that's the URL. Please type it in so other people can see it. It's expertempirewebinar.com. We start tomorrow night promptly at 8 o'clock, and it's always fun. It's always fun when we do everything. It's totally free, and it'll change your life. I think we're qualified to say that we can do that.
Yes.
So, all right, my friend. Well, I'm gonna bounce on out of here. If that works for you.
Yeah, it's all good.
All right. Well, I enjoyed speaking with everybody, and thanks again, Julie. And we're just having a conversation, so I don't know if I'm the host or you're the host, but I'll just go ahead and pretend to be the host.
Hey, it's all good. I consider you a mentor, but we can be peer to peer when we need to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's what we need in the community. We need black men and black women kind of working together. I believe that when we stick together and we really do our best to love and support and help each other out, I believe that we can't be stopped. Right. So with you as a fellow black man, I'm gonna spend a whole lot more time trying to find something I have in common with you than to find a reason to want to fight you.
Right.
If I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna go fight white supremacy. I'm gonna go fight my obstacles. I'm gonna go fight my inner demons or my challenges or whatever. I'm not gonna fight you. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something we can all kind of process as a community. We not only should commit ourselves to avoiding, conflicting with other people like ourselves, but also you should look for common ground, look for a reason to support each other. But then, even deeper than that, I think we should shun the fighting. Like, I think that when you see black folks just going at each other harder than we go at white folks, I think we should literally say, this is immature. This is not a productive discussion. I'm out. I'm not participating in any of this. Because I think the temptation to fight is always strong, and even I've fallen for that. So I personally think when I'm telling you, when I first met you, it was like my processing was, I thought about it in terms of I thought about y'all say this and I'll be done. I don't even know if this is public knowledge or not, but I thought about Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, right? Part of the reason that Al and Jesse are not the best of buddies is I felt that Jesse kind of wanted to be the star of the show. He didn't want Al Sharpton to take any of his shine. So he kind of saw Al as like a threat. So Al's coming up, he's younger, he's got all this energy. And so maybe he didn't necessarily empower him, right? And so next thing you know, Al is, in a way, people don't know that they compete, but they really do compete. They don't really say it that much, but they do.
Yeah.
Whereas I noticed when I watched Sharpton, and again, I'm not even really a big fan of Sharpton in terms of some of the politics, but he's a very smart man. I will say that. I noticed that when he saw talented young people, he tended to really embrace and empower that. You know what I mean? Like he felt that, look, if I support you, you're going to support me. You're going to exalt me when I can't exalt myself. And so I personally think everybody in here can learn from that. When you see people come along that look like you, who are talented, find some common ground. That those are your allies. Do not push your allies away by being tempted to fall into crabs in a barrel, or jealousy, or feeling like you got to be the only Negro on the block. There is room for all of us to win, and the pie can be made bigger if we work together. So
Yes.
I'm committed to doing that, and that's going to be the better voice that you're going to continue to see, even as I evolve and figure this out.
Yeah, totally with that. I mean, you've already demonstrated that with Fly Nubian Queens and just growing that Michi X and growing that channel. Like, I don't know if people see the behind the scenes stuff where you're actually pouring into other people's businesses and brands in such an amazing way. You've done it for yourself, of course, with the team, and you are showing others how to do it. And I'm really grateful to be learning from you, also working with you, and I'm just grateful for you.
All right. Well, the feeling's mutual, brother. Much respect. And I'm gonna head on out of here. The queen just walked in. When she
Hey, Queen.
when she's telling me it's time to get off the computer, she just stands there and
it's time. Go do your thing.
She smiles, but I know what that smile means. It means,
Yeah.
okay, it's time for you to get in here and spend some time with me. So I'm about to go do what I'm supposed to do. So good night, everybody. I love you guys. So thanks a lot, Julian, man.
Yeah, much love.
All right, we'll see you all tomorrow night. ExpertEmpireWebinar.com. That's Expert Empire Webinar.